Good evening. I'm Marie Rizzo, moderator for New Rochelle Report. Tonight I will be welcoming as my guest Joseph Candria. Mr. Candria served on the Charter Revision Commission. He is the vice chairman of the New Rochelle Police Association Incorporated Citizens Advisory Committee. He's a member of the New Rochelle Police Foundation. More importantly, he is an actively concerned New Rochelle resident and has been for many, many years. Good evening, Joe.
Well, good evening again.
Welcome to New Rochelle Report. We did a show last week, which I hope everyone saw. This week, I would like to talk about what is happening or about to happen in West New Rochelle in a residential area. The Casa Calabria has had their clubhouse in West New Rochelle. They bought the building. In fact, the building that they bought was built in 1925, and in 1927 they put on a garage. It was 7 apartments in a garage. And as I said, in 1947, the Calabria bought those 7 apartments and a garage. And over the years, they cemented in the garage, and on and off had businesses and factories there. And you know, in West New Rochelle, the thing that maintains the stability that it has, in spite of the onslaught on the area, are all those wonderful streets that run into Union Avenue, which have homes on it that people, probably it's their biggest investment. They take care of it, they love it, they've lived there for years. Maybe their parents and grandparents own the house. And those areas are the thing that cause it to have a stable foundation. Now the Casa Calabria, which owns this clubhouse on Union Avenue, which is a C1 zoning, which means that they could have businesses or retail or offices or garage, as a garage, they could rent it for cars. They want to legalize a factory that they have there illegally. Now, I said over the years they have had businesses there, they have had factories there, and the people, mostly 99% Italian, never thought that what they were suffering with on and off a factory with the garbage and the noise and the dirt and the truck was anything illegal. They never thought they could complain. They thought that because it was the Casa Calabria, their own, so to speak, they would never do anything illegal or hurt the people or hurt the neighbors. Somebody made an anonymous complaint, and now we find out that the Casa Calabria has an illegal factory there in a residential area and has now gone before the Board of Appeals on zoning to make that factory legal. And we know that if they do that, that creation of a factory will be with that building ever after in a residential area. And I know you took some film of homes in West New Rochelle in the area of the Casa Calabria, and those homes, I thought we'd show them because you can tell us a little about this.
This is now just a few doors from the Casa Calabria. That's Warren Street, and there's some nice, beautiful homes on that street.
All of those houses are well-kept.
They're well-kept homes, and people seem to think that I have an explicit a point to make with the Casa Calabria. I wouldn't care if it was the Red Cross. That building, manufacturing does nothing. Look at that house that butts up against the Casa Calabria. Manufacturing right next door to that
That's
beautiful house.
That's the house on the left here, that white. And there's the Casa
Calabria right there.
Factory, right there next to that house.
Little doorway, absolutely. Right next to it.
They have about 30, 35 people working in there, a sewing machine.
And there's no parking on that side of the street. Now we're going towards Center Avenue. And
that's
look at those houses
Warren Street,
on
the
Warren
other
Street.
side.
I mean, there's no parking on that side of the street, which means whoever comes there to load or unload has to park on the sidewalk. And we found that to be true.
And didn't you say that was a snow emergency street?
That is a snow emergency street, and this is Grove Avenue. This is the neighborhood that evolves around the Casa Calabria. I mean, what are we talking about? First of all, we don't want in West New Rochelle what happened to them poor people on Pine Street. Them poor people on Pine Street
Joe,
woke
what is
up.
this now?
Now,
Well,
this is the block that I live in, and I'm going to be a show-off and show you the front of my house in 1 second.
isn't that beautifully
That's
kept?
Mr. Malucci, who lives right across it, who's a great guy.
Yeah.
This house now with this American flag in the front happens to be my home.
And you're proud of it, and
I certainly am.
justifiably
I
so.
certainly am proud of it, and
You keep it up beautifully.
absolutely. And you know, this is my neighborhood, and this is the other side of Charles Street, and I just find that these people one day are going to wake up early in the morning and find out that what happened on Pine Street, where now sex is allowed, sex clubs are allowed, is going to happen in our part of town, because manufacturing was the criteria that they used to encroach on these neighborhoods. Now, if there's manufacturing on Warren Street, what's going to stop somebody now from asking for manufacturing on Walnut Street, which is easy, or on Union Avenue, which doesn't allow manufacturing? We're going to become what Pine Street just became, and that's not right, and that really and truly is not right. And I'm not against. I mean, look at these nice homes. This is Walnut Street.
Now
Now that's the Casa Calabria, the front entrance
on Union
on
Avenue.
Union Avenue. Absolutely. And of course, it's members only from this entrance, because this is their club rooms. And if you go down a side, there's an entrance to, I think,
The factory
the
and an apartment.
no, an apartment.
Now look at that. That is what Lieutenant Capio did. He rented that space. He put that laundromat on the corner, which, you know, I called Lieutenant Capio when he opened that laundromat on the corner of Warren and Union and congratulated him on opening such a clean, nice-looking establishment. And that was an option that was open to the Casa Calabria. They could have put stores, they could have put offices, they could have put retail.
They could have also put the laundromat.
Yes, but
They
except
they could have also put the laundromat. And if they claim, and this is what I don't understand, actually is their claim. We don't know if it's true, because from what you have told me, that in Mamaroneck they have to swear to tell the truth that there's only
yes,
boys.
Joe, yes, let's discuss that for just a minute here.
Yeah.
Let's digress.
Right.
Do you know that both you and I have felt very strongly about
Right.
putting a factory in a residential area? We think that's horrendous to do to people
Absolutely.
who have homes there. And I noticed when I was going up to look into the files of the Board of Appeals on Zoning here in the city of New Rochelle, that things weren't in the files. Things weren't in the files. In fact, one file for a Mr. Malello who wanted to make a 3-family house out of a garage on Walnut Street, there was nothing in the file whatsoever, meaning that someone such as myself, if I wanted to go up and I wanted to look at that file, whether I wanted to take a stand for or against, there was no record in the Secretary's office in the Board of Appeals on Zoning in the city of New Rochelle that would have given me the facts that the board was going to use to make a decision on whether or not to grant Mr. Malello this variance. Now, how can you go before a board, either pro or con, if the facts are not there available to the public? They are not there. I called some of the other areas in Westchester and I said, can people go before your board if things aren't in the public file? Absolutely not. One woman pressed me and she said, what are we talking about? What are you talking about? I said, well, I'm really talking in general, but I said the thing that I was zeroing in on was we have a factory going into a residential area. Well, you could hear from her tone that this was unheard of in her area. She said, factory? Residential? Oh, no way. No, we wouldn't even consider such a thing. And she said, along with other communities that I called, that when you appeared before their Board of Appeals on Zoning, it was similar to going into a court. You had to take an oath that what you said was the truth. We don't have that in New Rochelle. Not only do we not have all the information available, and it's not the secretary on the for the Board of Appeals on Zoning is a wonderful person. Wonderful. It's not her fault. It's just that the people who are going before the board have a cavalier attitude that nothing's going to happen to me whether or not I give you the information now or I go before the Board of Appeals on Zoning the night of my hearing and I hand it to the members of the board and nobody else knows what's going on. And it's even unfair to the Board of Appeals on Zoning members because how can they study papers like this that are being handed to them the night that they're supposed to be talking about it or voting on it.
Well,
I think that that is something that should not be allowed and is not allowed in other communities.
well,
So I digress, but back to the
well,
Casa
I want to say
Calabria.
this in essence. Uh, I wonder if the Casa Calabria would have rented a store at a Wackygill shopping center and decided to put manufacturing there, what would happen?
Oh,
I wonder if they would entertain
Joe.
that. I wonder if they went on to Quaker Ridge Road, or they went somewhere in the North End and said, we want to put manufacturing. I want to see what the outcry would be.
It wouldn't even be on the
Fine.
agenda.
People think that it's the Casa Calabria. It's not the Casa Calabria. I don't care who's there. I've donated money to the Casa Calabria, and it's become a personal thing. And even though I was told at the beginning that my voice would be futile, it was ridiculous to oppose the Casa Calabria, because I don't like to use this vernacular, but I will, because I'm me, and people know that I'm not going to lie. What are you bothering with it for, Joe? The fix is in. And I went to 2 hearings. It became very personal, and it shouldn't have been personal. And I want to say, my grandfather came from Calabria. I don't have anything against Calabrians. I don't have anything against anybody. Just because I want to defend my neighbor, or I want to defend my neighborhood, do I have to become a victim of bureaucratic nonsense? When across the street from my house they wanted to put a construction yard, it was my family that wanted to do it, and I opposed it. So it's not that I don't like the Casa Calabria. I opposed my own family, my wife's family. I opposed that whole section of that. And I just can't believe that they take it personally. It's not personal. I just don't want to happen to West New Rochelle what happened to them poor people on Pine Street, Beechwood Avenue, and what the future holds for them, Rockland Avenue. I'm surprised, I'm astonished that, first of all, the council person who represents that area doesn't come. Well, absolutely. He has never taken a stand on anything other than telling me personally that he doesn't represent me because I don't live in his district. Mr. Facina never became active.
He has most of West New Rochelle, but not your particular street.
Not my side of the street.
Right.
But Mr. Facina never took an active role in a problem that we had with the bar. Mm-hmm. He never took an active role. I think that he should be there protecting those citizens who he put in his district. That he should be protecting them and saying to the Casa Calabria, no, I have to take a position on this. You're not going to hurt my people. This is opening up a wide door. This means that any store on Union Avenue, any building that formerly was a gardener's garage, he can apply to have manufacturing. And he's going to turn around and say, you gave it to the Casa Calabria. Where was their hardship? Mm-hmm. Because all of this is based on hardship. Mm-hmm. That's why you go before the zoning board on appeals. You go there because you have a hardship. You can't make the rent. You can't make the thing.
But Joe, first of all, they say that just because they give a variance, a use variance to one person like the Casa Calabria.
That's forever.
That's forever. They say, well, we're not bound. So the story is that they're not bound if they give the Casa Calabria a factory in a residential area. They're not bound to do it for anybody else. But you and I both know that once you give it to someone else, it most certainly gives weight to the fact that you did it there. Why are you not going to do it for me? And you're absolutely right, because let me say this, Joe. You and I have been active for good government in this city for many, many years, and we know a lot about what goes on. I understand that the pressure that was put on the Board of Appeals on zoning to vote for the Casa Calabria for this factory in a residential area was unbelievable. Unprecedented.
I had heard something.
Unprecedented.
I had heard
because let me say this, Joe. If you remember, we were at a meeting in Columbus School, and the mayor was there, and Councilman Facina was there, and I brought up, and it was brought up about the bar. We brought up about the factory, the Casa Calabria, and I said to Councilman Facina, I said, you should be there protecting your constituents. Now, the problem with West New Rochelle is that the people aren't vocal enough. That if somebody such as a Joe Facina, who they recognize his family name, that he was born and raised in West New Rochelle, they maybe don't subscribe to the paper, they don't get involved with what's going on. They go to the voting booth if they vote at all, and they see Facina and they say, oh yes, oh I know him, its mother was born and raised in West New Rochelle, and they pull the lever. They've got to start getting as smart as the people in the North End, and I give them a lot of credit, because you understand that if a Joe Facina was running up in the North End and he didn't do what he was supposed to do for his constituents, they would crawl all over him like hot lava. But Joe Facina will not show up. He will not take a stand against the Casa Calabria. He will not take a stand against that bar because he knows people involved in the bar. He knows people involved in the Casa Calabria. He won't do it, and he is secure in the knowledge that, you know what, if he should run again, the people there would probably elect him because they don't get involved. And they've got to start waking up. Maybe they won't wake up until all of a sudden they have something absolutely horrendous happen. I don't know, Joe, but you know, they've got to wake up and start smelling the coffee burning. You and I fight. We've got a bunch of other people that fight. We've got to get more people involved in the fight.
Well, except, you remember at that meeting, I got up and made some statements, and he said, I don't even know why I have to talk to you. You don't live in my district. And I have another 3 years, and too bad that you didn't like me running for election. And it's an in-your-face type thing. And it's in your face with the mayor, who says, you don't like it? Too bad, you're stuck with me for 3.5 years, three more years. And if you don't like it, too bad. And that's the way it is. And let me tell you something. Mr. Facina, and I call him Mr. Facina, hasn't taken the oath that he takes on January 1st, that he represents all the people. If he felt that way, then he shouldn't be voting on Home Depot. He shouldn't be voting on anything that's happening in his city because they're not in his district. Home Depot happens to be in his district because through his eyes, he took out Charles Street, one side of Charles Street, one side of Union Avenue, and one side of Grove Avenue, out of his district.
You mean when they were doing the redistricting?
When they were doing the redistrict, he chose to take Union Avenue, going west. He decided that the south side of Union Avenue, up to Charles Street, and the south side, the east side of Charles Street, and the west side of Grove Avenue, that little perimeter from Division Street to Charles Street
would not be in his
would
district.
not be in his district. But he ended up going all the way over to the other side of Main Street, to Bayard Street.
But Joe, we all know that the
And
lines
he
were
took
drawn.
Pine Street.
We all know that the lines were drawn to favor the incumbents. Now, let me say this.
Yeah, but how is West New Rochelle not West New Rochelle without the one side of Charles
I know,
Street?
they did
How
it
did they do that?
deliberately. But back to the Casa Calabria.
Fine.
All right. You and I and a whole group of people went up to the Board of Appeals on zoning, and we protested a factory in a residential area.
To no avail, by the way.
Well, yeah, yes. So you're telling the end of the story first, but yes,
Yes.
we appeared 3 months in a row. I don't think that anybody could have done a better job than all of us did in presenting a case that proved that the Casa Calabria was running a factory illegally, had run a factory illegally on and off for years, did not adhere to, you know, the state gives you 4 criteria, and you must adhere to all, that you must fall under the category of all 4 criteria to get a use variance. I did not think that they had even one of those things in their favor, and yet
Yes.
the board voted 4-2 to allow them to have a factory in a residential area. Now, Mr. Abrams, who is the chairman of that,
Who's the longest member, by the way?
who's the longest member and an extremely intelligent man, has a lot of background, I think, in something like this. He voted against the Casa Calabria, and he told his reasons. And Mr. Falvey, who I believe is a lawyer, gave his legal opinion, or his opinion as a Board of Appeals on Zoning member, as to why it was not proper. 4 other people
Who are Democratic district leaders, by the way. I'm sure that they're all Democratic district
I don't
leaders.
know.
Okay, fine. They're
Well,
all.
I don't. Is Mr. Grabowski a Democratic district leader?
I think he is.
I don't know.
Well, you mean the fellow who owns the
Yeah,
Wicker shop?
Wicker
Who
Paradise.
parks his truck in a no parking zone all day long? Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I think he's a district leader. Uh, and by the way, let's not forget that the president of the Casa Calabria is a district leader, Democratic district leader.
Yes, and he's also Mayor Idoni appointed him as chairman of the Civil Service
Fine, but
Commission.
that was also for bringing in the votes. I mean,
Right.
if I'd have thought lunch would buy Tim Idoni, I'd have bought him a lot of lunches and a lot of dinner.
Right.
If I'd have thought that, but I don't
But-
really, you know,
but
I don't.
my point is, Joe.
I just apologize for that type of thing because maybe that's the way I feel. And if Tim Idoni, I don't think you got paid off. I don't think any of that. I really believe that you're doing the best thing you know how. But let me tell you,
No,
I
but
seen
Joe,
you every day
Joe,
down
let's face it.
I seen you every day down there at Mama Francesca, the meeting place of the Democratic Party. You're not kidding nobody.
Mhm.
You're not kidding a soul.
Mhm.
So, you know, he was down there buying your lunch, or you
Joe,
bought his lunch. But you couldn't afford to buy his lunch because you didn't get your raise yet.
Mhm.
So maybe you would, maybe he got a charge account. You know, Nick Costanzo happens to be a nice guy. Maybe he took it. Maybe he felt sorry for you because you weren't making a lot of money. But I just want to say this.
When you say you mean the mayor.
The mayor, absolutely.
Right. But let me say this, Joe. There is not one shadow of a doubt in my mind, from having talked to people that know what goes on in this city, that there was political pressure put on the board to vote for the Casa Calabria for a factory in a residential area.
I believe that.
I believe that. You know, I don't say anything unless I
Right.
believe it, and I've heard it on good authority. And my feeling is that we presented a case to the Board of Appeals on Zoning that proved that that factory had been there on and off for years, never legally, did not have a certificate of occupancy, and yet one of the lawyers that appeared for the Casa Calabria had multiple leases. And you know, Joe, what does a lawyer do most? Real estate? And he never knew when he was writing all those leases that he didn't have a certificate of occupancy for a factory. I mean, Joe, it was so ludicrous. And wait a minute, Joe.
Yes.
Let me finish some points. Then they gave in their statement of income and expenses, and they say in their statement of income and expenses, and a lot of their members don't even live in New Rochelle.
Yeah,
And
I
don't
wanna
live
get
in
to
West
that.
New
I
Rochelle.
wanted
It's
to get-
all right to dump
They ran
a
away
factory.
from those members who now live down by you.
Eastchester,
They live
Liberty
down by
Avenue.
Davenport and all. They used to live in West New Rochelle, and they ran away from what's going on up there. But
But they're going to dump on
they're
it.
going to dump on us.
It's all right for
I
you to
wanted
put a
say
factory
this.
there.
I wanted to say this just to get back to the board. I think Frances Clemens is an outstanding person. I think most of the time she goes out and investigates these things. I think she might have investigated this. I just think that if they did, they certainly wouldn't have voted yes to the Casa Calabria. After looking at those beautiful homes and learning and knowing what's going to happen to that neighborhood eventually, and it's going to, let's not kid ourselves. Another person's going to apply for manufacturing. I'm telling you there is.
But Joe, I thought that the case that the people against it presented, the fact that it didn't have a C of O, it was never legal. It was never even continuous. That the papers
And
that
they're still allowed to continue. That's the difference. I had a problem with the building department.
Don't digress now.
Oh, no. I had a problem. I had to take
'Cause
care of it right away.
Oh, yeah, you had to hire a lawyer for $5,000.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
But
So
Joe,
what are you telling me? What did they tell us in this case? They could still do what they're doing. Whether it's wrong or right, they could still continue.
but that's what's causing the demise of New Rochelle. This kind of
What's causing the demise of New Rochelle
remember when they had and I don't want to digress, but I
Right.
just want to use this as a
Right.
point. Remember when the surf club was operating without permits, and
Yeah, but that was only
wait
paper.
a minute, and
That was only
wait
paper.
a minute, no, it wasn't. It
Well,
was
that's what they
that was not true. It was a very serious health and safety thing. But let me say this. Just like the Gannett newspaper wrote an article, an editorial saying that New Rochelle winks at things that go on, this is the type of thing that has caused the demise of New Rochelle for the last 20 years. People getting things that they shouldn't be getting, which has caused the demise of the whole city. It is absolutely corroding because of things like this, attacks in every area because somebody knows somebody, and it causes the downfall of that area, or it causes a business not to come into the city. They go someplace else because they get so fed up. But what I wanted to point out was that that Casa Calabria, even when they were trying to prove their hardship, they put in their hardship thing that they get dues from members, but not everybody contributes. They're going to tell the people in West New Rochelle, we should have a factory there because we have a hardship. But our own members don't care enough to support their club to pay their dues. I mean, Joe, it was such a flagrant, step-by-step, flagrant abuse of the law. I don't know how they gave it to them.
They haven't even been good neighbors. A while back, garbage was out in front of that store, in front of Warren Street, 7 days a week. Mm-hmm. The tenants upstairs put their garbage, or somebody put their garbage there, although I was told it was somebody else. 7 days a week garbage was out there. There was also some graffiti on a wall, and I made a point of that. And I want to say this on their behalf, that the next Monday after we had the hearing, and I pointed out that the picture in the Standard Star showed graffiti, and that when we were there the next month, the graffiti was still on a wall. The next Monday it was cleaned off. Why couldn't they do that at the beginning? And why did the garbage stay out there 7 days a week? And I'll tell you a little story about how that's
very
connected.
Quick, because we
very
only have
quick.
A few minutes.
Well, I made a complaint and had to give my name.
That you don't have to do. You're not supposed to ask.
Well,
that,
fine,
Joe.
but I gave my name.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a call from a person who was a member of the Calabria and wanted to know why I was picking on the Calabria. I don't even want to get into it. Was it 15 minutes after I made the complaint?
They knew about it.
They knew about it.
Somebody called them and told
Somebody called them and told them, who called me and says, "What are you doing with
they aren't even supposed to ask your name, and they're not supposed to be telling that information.
But I gave my name. I'm not obsessed.
But you have to understand that area in the master plan, which the city just paid for, says that area should be multi-family. Nowhere is there factory mentioned, and we've made this point. And you know what? The coup de grace, Joe, the thing that, and you weren't at that last meeting.
No, I wasn't.
But the thing that, because it was too aggravating. But I went.
Well, not aggravating. I think that the confrontation that took place the week before was very personal, and I didn't think that should have happened.
Right. But all right, let me tell you something, Joe. What I think the most outrageous thing that I heard at that meeting on the Board of Appeals on Zoning was when one of the members said to the owner, "Should we? What do you want? It opened every day, 8 to 6. Is that good? 10 hours a day, a factory next." And then said, "What about weekends? What about weekends?" Joe, can you imagine? And you know what I said? I raised my hand. I said to Mr. Abrams, who's a very conscientious chairman of the Board of Appeals on Zoning, I said, "You know what conditions?" And they were talking about conditions for the factory. I said, "You know, the members who voted, something to the effect, the members that voted for a factory next to somebody's home should put the same conditions on that factory that they would want if the factory was voted next to their home."
It don't belong
which,
there.
Joe, it would never
belong there.
be, because it doesn't belong there. But can you imagine them entertaining 10 hours a day and weekends? I find this horrendous, and I want to say in closing
West New Rochelle.
that we're going to fight this. We're not
Absolutely.
going to accept this. And I want to say good night.